So this video is a follow-up to the one that I did a few months ago about Lance Wallnau promoting Steve Bannon, promoting Alexander Dugin, promoting Aleister Crowley. Kind of like a one thing leads to another. And just the other day, Steve Montgomery, who wrote the book about the converging apostasy, which I have covered in a few videos, he sent me a chapter from his book that related to that. So I thought, well, I'll just do like a little update. And so this video, I'm going to show you a little bit of the previous video that I'm talking about, a couple minutes of that, and it's mostly me reading. It's very interesting because it's a lot of more interesting information about Gnosticism and Otzi nay, Hitler hey, ultra-right kind of stuff. And, you know, I never knew about any of this before. I thought I was on the right side and everything was cool. And then I started finding out that, guess what? You know, we see a lot of very dark occult weirdness in Hollywood and the music industry and all that. Well, guess what? There's a right angle of that too. So that's why I'm making this video, because I just wanted to show that in the NAR and all the other things that I talk about, they're really blending politics and religion together, just like the New Age does. And if you're a Christian, a conservative, I'm just saying that there is a dark side to that. And a couple years ago, I actually was following some letter after P groups on, you know, on social media and stuff. And I started noticing, wow, there's so much New Agey comments underneath, right? And I was also seeing so many pro-Putin memes and stuff. So this is going back like 4 or 5 years. And I want to really say a big thank you to Stephen Montgomery. And you should also check out the latest podcast or YouTube video with him and John Collins from Leaving the Message. They did a really great video today, which also connects all these things together. So, thanks for watching. 2 more things. The word Otzi nay in Pig Latin was used frequently. I had to cut my words out a little bit. And there is some very adult themes, so this is not for children.
The Tale of Sir Lancelot.
The Lance Wallnau Show is coming at you live from the Master himself.
From the Master himself. From the Master himself.
With a special broadcast taken from one of Lance's most recent appearances. Tune in and get ready for some major revelation.
I pray you take the smell of smoke, the disappointment, the bitterness, the anger, the feeling of betrayal and loss. That it must be a terrible thing, Lord, to actually feel as though you've been stolen an election and that the nation that you love is suffering with it. I pray, Lord, that you'll take the smoke away, but you'll give him a revelation that he is nothing but an instrument of yours, and that as an instrument, you have your hand on him. Seeing something great happen with the fellow whose show is right before mine on Saturday, Steve Bannon. I see God doing a work in him. I want you guys to pray for Brother Steve, for Brother Steve, for Brother Steve. This guy's like, I mean, he was probably called to be an apostle. I mean, everything that he does, he's a command center, but he's got an apostolic grace on him.
Okay, so here we have Lance Wallnau with Steve Bannon taking over the show. And then we have the connection between Steve Bannon and Alexander Dugin. And here's Alexander Dugin with his chaos magic symbol in the background.
Ahead, Mr. Trump. In Trump we trust.
And then you'll see there's a connection between Alexander Dugin and Aleister Crowley with his chaos magic stuff. And then, of course, you have Lance Wallnau with God's Chaos Code and God's Chaos Candidate. Some
coming out of this dream, the shaman told me that actually the best thing happened in this planet right now is the Trump to be the president. I said, how is this possible? It's the best thing to happen. He said, yes, because he's so irrational, he's so crazy. That's actually create that awakening, that we finally wake up. Because before it will be another guy and everything looks similar, but he's so different than anything else. So he's the magician who waking us up. What do you think about that? That kind of theory.
We're crazy. We're crazy. We're crazy. People that are contemporary thought leaders that are actually going to be coming into our environment. Many of them are Christian, but I'm calling in a lot of the Catholic leaders that I believe really fear God, and I want to see them all get filled with the Holy Spirit. I think Steve Bannon should speak in tongues. And so with that thought in mind, I think the whole Trump family should be charismatic, come to think of it. All of them should be. Doesn't get involved. We lose elections by 10,000, 5,000, 8,000 people voting. Like I said, 82% of evangelicals showed up. So the message to Washington is, poor Bannon. Let me give a word to Steve Bannon. Steve Reno, don't you be discouraged. Don't you be discouraged, Steve. He wasn't crazy about Roy Moore after he found out about, the sex allegations. But I'm a creep. It was frustrating. He wanted to make a point to Donald Trump that populism is the way to go. Be true to your roots. Don't get caught up in, negotiating with the establishment. We're going to take on that establishment this year before 2018. They're going to feel the heat, people. Yes, they are. Steve Reno, don't be discouraged. Do your meditation stuff. Stay in the vein you're in, kind of channeling your inner peace man. We're going to be praying for you. We pray for Steve tonight, Lord. Just cover his head in grace and peace and give him consolation and insight and understanding. We're going to pull together because he still is storming the barricades of the establishment status quo. The truth is, if the establishment hadn't beat so hard on Roy, I'm talking about the Republicans. Because after all, we represent 25 million of us out there. We're not always organized. We're not always coherently motivated. But once we get our crosshairs fixed, bam, when we show up, watch out.
A thematic critique of the teachings of Alexander Dugin. Influences. Dugin calls himself, number one, a traditionalist who is in favor of antiquity and against modernity, and number two, a follower of Vladimir Solovyov and Julius Evola. As an influential, mystically inclined, persuasive power behind the throne, he has been referred to as President Vladimir Putin's Rasputin. In addition, Robert Zerbin's Dugin's Evil Theology in the National Review, June 14, 2014, states that Dugin was involved in proto-Nazi mystical circles and Thule Society-like organizations in the 1980s. To place this in context of the themes of the converging apostasy, the Thule Society, named after a mythical northern country in Greek legend, concerned itself with the origins of the Aryan race. They identified Ultima Thule as an ancient lost landmass in the extreme north, which is said by non-mystics to be the capital of the ancient mythical Hyperborea. Yes, it's true. Nazism is rife with many esoterically based, undeniable insanities beyond those that are more widely known. In Search of the Dark Logos, Philosophico-Theological Outlines by Dugin, 2013, the chapter titles themselves give us some insight into the kinds of esoteric topics that drive his thinking. For example, they include some of the major players of the converging apostasy, such as can be seen in Chapter 9, The Challenge of Valentinus, Chapter 12, Kabbalah and Neoplatonism, in Chapter 13, Traditionalism as a Theory, Sophia and Plato. In Chapter 13, Dugin tells us that the traditionalist movement of René Guénon and others like Julius Evola believed, as did Helena Blavatsky, that there is basic universal truth present in all religions, and that these universal truths, number one, elevate the figure of Sophia, and two, promote a primordial theology which can be boiled down to Platonism and Neoplatonism. Elsewhere, we learn that for Dugin, Platonism was the universal wisdom. Dugan rightly asserts that we can trace the line of what he calls the dark logos through the mystics of occultism, Kabbalah, Neoplatonists, and Satanists like Eliphas Levi. As a reminder, it was Levi who first depicted the devil as the goat man woman Baphomet, ubiquitous in Satanist-oriented occultism, and two, influenced Blavatsky's positive views about Satan and fallen angels. Under the subheading, The Dark Logos of Neoplatonism, Dugan says that Neoplatonism contains the main ideas of Plato in a synthesis with other Hellenistic and Middle Eastern religious and mystical systems. Likewise, he asserts that the thread of the Dark Logos can be found in Kabbalah, alchemy, the teachings of the Gnostic sects, and the millenarian doctrines of the three kingdoms espoused by Joachim of Fior. As is stated elsewhere, the three kingdoms of Joachim of Fior are similar to the Gnostic Valentinus conception of three levels of spirituality, the third being the perfection of union with one's personal angel, are comparable to the manifest sons of God teachings about the three levels of salvation, the third being divine manifested sonship. And I'm sorry, I wasn't counting. Number three, echo the third spiritual initiation of Alice Bailey to some degree, and four are the historical basis for the Third Reich. Taking Dominion, the Sacred Purge, and Angels. In Dugan's Evil Theology, published in the National Review, June 14, 2014, Robert Zerbin quotes, "The American Empire should be destroyed. Alexander Dugan and the Perils of Immanentized Eschatology by James Heiser." As is mentioned elsewhere, to immanentize is to attempt to bring about the utopian conditions of the kingdom/New Age through human efforts. According to Heiser, Dugan sees the entire history of the world as a continuous battle between two factions, Russia and Eurasianism. Russia and Eurasianism versus the Atlantic Order of the West. The West is exemplified, of no surprise, by the United States. Accordingly, Dugan bluntly states that the American empire should be destroyed. This, of course, is not a great idea to have, considering the fact that Dugan acts as an influencer of Vladimir Putin. With his mental state and the stockpile of nuclear weapons at their fingertips, war with Dugan and his mouthpiece Putin poses the possibility of an unwinnable war. Pause. I would just like to say I have seen for years a lot of people who really like Donald Trump also really think Putin is cool because he says things that sound like a conservative is saying about morality or stuff like that, or that he's against the alphabet people. And so Christians think, oh, he's one of us. He's on our side. Nope. Heiser tells us that Dugan's eschatological view is a dualistic form of Gnosticism, expressing a battleground of the forces of good and evil, in which he sees the West as the realm of Antichrist. Heiser says that Dugan's fusion of traditionalism and Eurasianism has become a Gnostic mass movement and an activist mysticism. To explain this form of activism in the fourth political theory, Dugan lets his readers know something that, number one, Alice Bailey influenced New Agers with hands-on eschatology, and number two, Jane Lead influenced Manifest Sons of God believers both affirm. For example, he tells those under his influence that their involvement is required to bring in the kingdom. The end times and the eschatological meaning of politics will not realize themselves on their own. Wow. In his version of Hands-on Eschatology, Dugan connects the themes of taking dominion, the sacred purge, deification based on the big lie, and angels. For example, in the Metaphysics of National Bolshevism, he says that this greatest revolution of history, a universal one, will include the angel's return and the hero's resurrection. What? In addition, sounding something like a Valentinian text and Russian President Putin, Dugan says that the Russian people will cause the end of the world, since death is the way to immortality. Mo Bedard, aka Mo, and self-proclaimed expert in Gnosticism, the occult, and esotericism, posted an article about Dugin at GnosticWarrior.com, which sheds more light on Dugin via Putin's path toward omnicide, world destruction. In relation to the nature and direction of this path, Bedard refers to Dugin as Putin's left-hand Gnostic man, who separates the wheat from the tares. Bedard, like Alice Bailey and Savitri Devi, and strangely similar to Jane Lead-inspired Manifest Sons of God teacher J. Preston Eby, does not refer to Hitler as an evil man. Instead, he says that Hitler was an example of one who became overwhelmed by a deeper, more ancient, more absolute aspiration in the Gnostic spirit. He was, in essence, filled with the secret and terrible light of the left-hand path. Is this what we are dealing with when attempting to enact foreign policy with Russia? If so, this deeper and more terrible left-hand path is illuminated via Valentinus, via Kabbalah, via Solovyov, via Dugin, via Putin. Anti-Semitism and race and the sacred purge. Speaking in typical neo-tropes, Dugin says that the flame of Hyperborea will transform geopolitical reality into a new global ideology, like those influenced by the precedents Jane Lead set for hands-on eschatology. This new reality will bring the final restoration, but not in the way that globalist spokesmen have theorized. According to Dugin, globalist spokesmen are predominantly to be found in the West, the USA in particular, and are identified as the Antichrist, people from the Bible land, people from the Holy Land. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to use that. That's my code word. Who control international banking. Okay? Wow. In the chapter titled Alexander Dugin Between Eschatology, Esotericism, and Conspiracy Theory in the Handbook of Conspiracy Theory and Contemporary Religion, Victor Schnirelman explains Dugin's position further. For example, Schnirelman says that Dugin joins the long list of those who vilify the Holy Land people as a corollary to their esoteric-based worldview. Dugin does this in his writings about the world plot of the eternal enemy, which he relates to the narrative of the Antichrist. This mindset is preoccupied with conspiratorial anti-Semitism, where history unfolds as an eternal occult war between true Christianity and Judaism, intimating the sacred purge and the coming of a world leader considered to be the Christ, according to Dugin. This version of the end will ultimately give way to, number one, the final victory of the sacred avatar, i.e. a Christ-like world leader, and two, the coming of the great judgment. The Devil Reborn. On page 11 and 12 of Dugin's Search of the Dark Logos, Philosophico-Theological Outlines, 2013, under the subtitle of The New Gnosis, we learn more about the Dark Logos, aka Chaos. Pause. Like the Chaos Candidate by Lance Wallnau. Just saying. For example, the Dark Logos is said to be like the invisible sun that Blavatsky spoke of, and which Kabbalistic theosophers refer to as the black light. This takes on greater significance on page 17, where it is said that the root meaning of the Sanskrit swastika is symbolized by the black sun, and as the Valentinian Gnostic womb of potentiality associated with Valentinus, Lucifer like Sophia. As always, symbolic metaphor meets metaphor to convey literal meaning which can translate into actions and should matter to traditional Orthodox Christians. In Heiser's The American Empire Should Be Destroyed, Alexander Dugin and the Perils of Immanentized Eschatology, we learn more about Dugin's esoteric-friendly interpretation of the word chaos. For example, Heiser comments on Dugin's worship of chaos and his adoption of the occult symbol of the eight-pointed star of chaos as the emblem of the Eurasianist movement. He tells us that for Dugin, the Logos, which is associated with Christ in biblical tradition, is replaced by chaos. This means that Dugin's invocation of chaos over and against Logos leads to certain inevitable conclusions. Given the context of his background and his current doctrines, Heiser unequivocally states that Dugin's Eurasianism is a satanic cult. What does this imply about Putin? Interestingly, in the previously referenced article about Dugin posted by Mo Bedard on the Gnostic Warrior website, we are told that there are two types of spirituality, the right-hand path and the left-hand path. It is further said that the left-hand path that Dugin follows is more difficult, but it is the only true path to glory and immortality, the only path that allows one to conquer. As is often the case, as we see in this quest for glory and immortality, the stench of the devil reborn is regularly followed by the nausea that comes with his offer of deification based on the big lie. For those fallen seekers on this left-hand path, we are told that the prison of substance will collapse and be transformed into a celestial city, which is the moment of the end, when there will be a triumph of total liberation. Here again we see that the liberation of the converging apostasy is associated with sacred purge, sacred suicide, death, destruction, and the devil reborn. The multifaceted goddess and the devil reborn. At the Gnostic Warrior, Mo tells us that as Putin's Russian Gnostic Dugin uncovers the mystery of Sophia and her struggle against the malicious demiurge, in Gnosticism, the demiurge would actually be Jehovah in the Bible. God, the Father God, the one that created the world, that is their demiurge. Just in case anybody didn't know that. As an angel of the sacred purge, he embodies the sacred berserk passion to total destruction of all that is black for the sake of finding new, unearthly light. By recognizing and uncovering him, Dugin connects the mysteries of Valentinus, fallen, Lucifer-like Sophia, with what Bedard calls the left-hand path. And by way of this connection, Dugin identifies himself as a follower of this road to immortality and liberation from God, the Creator. In his Pneumachia, the three logi, Apollo, Dionysus, and Cybele, I can't remember.
Cybele.
Dugin continues with a devil-centric chaos, i.e. the dark logos, as opposed to the Christocentric logos. Fittingly, this text is referred to as a continuation of another book, In Search of the Dark Logos. Furthermore, we are told that the logos of the great mother Cybele, as with the Lucifer-like Sophia, is a hidden black logos. To put Cybele in her proper context, in the converging apostasy, she was the ancient Phrygian mother of the gods. She was considered to be a nature goddess, worshipped with orgiastic rites. Her ecstatic cults reputedly met exclusively at night, expressing themselves with music, especially drumming, consuming hallucinogenic plants, and fervorous dancing. Dugin shows more connections with the Dark Logos, the left-hand path, and the multifaceted goddess who is Cybele, who is Sophia, who is legions of others. For example, chapter 6 is titled Valentinus the Gnostic, Sophia and the Structures of the Feminine Logos. It should be clear that according to Orthodox biblically based Christianity, this shape-shifting Lucifer-like Sophia of the Gnostic Valentinus is by no means divine. In Search of the Dark Logos, Dugin tells us that it was from this eternal Sophia that the Europeans of modernity acquired their mandate to conquer the world, as the bearers of higher universal knowledge. Interestingly, this quest for conquest is mirrored in Jane Leeds' comments about Sophia's divine inspiration for the colonizing role to be played by England. Dugin asks rhetorically if perennialism, traditionalism, universalism, and the true Sophia began with Plato's theory. He answers this question by saying that traditionalists see Plato as the link in the golden chain of initiates which stretches back to the dawn of creation, to the earthly paradise, and to Sophia, the secret bride of humanity in search of divinity. Dugin then asks a two-part question. How can we relate the fact of the Kali Yuga, which he defines as our God-forsaken now, with our understanding of Sophia as the angel initiator, and 2, the knowledge of man as divine being. He answers his question saying that the Gnostics offered a dualistic answer, which according to him seems to be the only one acceptable. In other words, Dugan acknowledges that the world is indeed broken, but for him the fix comes with the unholy union of the Lucifer-like Sophia and fallen humanity. A thematic critique of the teachings of Savitri Devi. Background. In Hindu Mysticism and the Alt-Right by David Lawrence, 2018, we learn that Maximiani Portis changed her name to Savitri Devi in the honor of the Indo-Aryan goddess. Lawrence tells us that Devi's materials are freely available on multiple alt-right sites, such as the Daily Stormer, where we learn about the myths of a utopian and racially pure lost civilization and whiteness as the indicator of divine origins. These sorts of themes provide motivation for adherents to recapture what they believe belongs to them. Lawrence points out that Devi has influenced neo-Nazism, the New Age movement, and the alt-right. We learn that Devi's views are reaching a wider public through alt-right leaders such as Richard Spencer and Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, Brother Steve, you know, the apostle, that guy that Lance Wallnau was talking about. Okay, Steve Bannon, Trump's former chief strategist and chair of Breitbart News. As a reminder, it is Bannon who has favorably cited the works of Julius Evola, the Italian mystical fascist and advisor to Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. Alexander Dugin, the neo-Gnostic fascist and advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin, also sings the praises of Evola. Sounds like Ebola. Maybe I should call him Ebola. For more on the significance of Evola and Dugin, refer to my critiques of their teachings, connections, and influences. Fittingly, white nationalist Spencer of the National Policy Institute has jokingly deified Trump as the incarnation of Kalki. He has also invoked Savitri Devi in a speech by saying, like her, that white people are the children of the sun. Anti-Semitism and race. Significantly, Lawrence goes on to say that Devi was a proponent of a synthesis of Hinduism and Nazism, proclaiming that Adolf Hitler was sent by Providence. According to Devi, Hitler made a sacrifice for humanity in order to lead to the end of the Dark Age, i.e. the Kali Yuga, under the reign of the Bible Land people, and usher in a golden age. In her, The Lightning and the Sun, Devi records that Hitler prophesied in 1928 of the New Order, saying of himself, "I am not he, but while nobody comes forward to prepare the way for him, I do so." Is this applicable for America today? That's a really good question. The multifaceted goddess, race, and the sacred purge. In her excellent 2017 documentary titled Savitri Devi, From the Aryans to the Alt-Right, Maria Margaronis begins by saying that Devi once prayed in front of a temple of Kalika for the Nazi victims of the Nuremberg trial who were unjustly accused of war crimes against humanity. Wow. Devi reportedly said, "Mother, dark blue mother, avenge them, avenge them, avenge them, the martyrs of Nuremberg."
Avenge the martyrs of Nuremberg.
For her, Hitler's only mistake was that he was too kind. Okay, I'm going to pause again. So, this is bringing it all together. New Age, Gnostics, Nazis, Manifest Sons of God, MAGA. According to Margaronis, the writing of alternative histories by the alt-right, neo-Nazi supremacists, and Hindu nationalists all flow together through Savitri's cracked vision. She says that the far right usually posits a lost utopia that's been undermined by the Bible people, the Holy Land people. Moreover, the alt-right promises to defeat the threat and make the country great again by winding back the clock to an idealized past when white men were firmly in control. Given some of the rumblings we have heard on the fringes of society in America and elsewhere, this misguided search for an idealized past should be apparent and called out for what it is: an anti-Christian call for violence and the suppression of truth. A thematic critique of the teachings of Julius Evola. Background. In his February 10, 2017 New York Times article titled "Steve Bannon Cited Italian Thinker Who Inspired Fascists," Jason Horowitz writes that Steve Bannon, former President Trump's ideological guru, made a favorable reference to the affiliated thinker Julius Evola at a Vatican conference in 2014. Furthermore, Evola, who became a darling of Italian fascists and Italy's post-fascist terrorists, has also caught on with leaders of the alt-right movement, which Bannon helped harness for Mr. Trump's political plans. Mark Sedgwick, a leading scholar of the anti-postmodernist traditionalist, said that the fact that Bannon even knows Evola is significant. Likewise, another Evola supporter said, "It's the first time that an advisor to the American president knows Evola, and it means a tremendous amount that Bannon was aware of Evola and other traditionalist thinkers." The Sacred Purge, The Devil Reborn, and Sacred Sex. What? As with Vladimir Solovyov and others influenced by the 2nd century Gnostic Valentinus and Kabbalah, Evola says that woman in union with her is a means of participating in the divine. In a way similar to the ideas of Alice Bailey, Evola said that some differentiated individuals who follow the left-hand path of the occult use dark, violent sexual powers against the modern world. According to Evola, the left-hand path embraces violence. He believed, like Aleister Crowley the Satanist, that in sex magic there exists a strategy for aggression. Richard K. Payne, Dean of the Institute of Buddhist Studies, has said that Evola attempted to use sex magic in the service of right-wing violence. According to Evola, virile heroes such as Mussolini and Hitler are both generous and cruel. They possessed the ability to rule and committed Dionysian acts that might be seen as conventionally immoral. All underscores in italics mine. This appraisal comes as no surprise in that Evola wrote the article Reich and Imperium as elements in the New European Order, backed journal European Review. The Multifaceted Goddess, The Devil Reborn, and Sacred Sex. In The Mysteries of Woman in East and West, Part 2, 1958, Evola talks of union with the goddess, which he relates to the multifaceted goddess Sophia as a principle of liberation. He adds that a secret ritual known as Pankatattva, which is associated with the dark path of the left hand, gains the male participant special powers by uniting sexually with women. For Evola, the effects of this sex initiation are equal to those of the mystical awakening of the Kundalini. According to him, this is a dangerous power which produces liberation through the goddess. For example, echoing the sexually charged themes used in the Valentinian Gnostic sacraments of one, the deifying connection with one's personal angel in the consummation of the bridal chamber, and two, the redemption from the controlling powers of the Creator, the demiurge Jehovah. Evola says that the union of man with woman has the value of an initiation and announces the great liberation, i.e., a final renunciation of God. Wow. This confluence of, number one, sexual ritual, number two, deification, and three, a liberating renunciation of God the Creator seems to foreshadow what might be some of the ingredients necessary for the restoration of the mystery religion stated by Helena Blavatsky, who paradoxically indicated that the religion of the future will be the religion of the past. That the religion of the future will be the religion of the past. So that's what the New Age is. That's the definition. It's the religion of the past for the New Age, the Age of Aquarius. A facsimile of this conception of restoration was Christianized by Vladimir Solovyov and Alice Bailey as the inauguration of a revitalized universal church. Universal church. How can Christians interpret these programs to improve the world through apostate religious themes anything other than a rebirth of the devil who, like the phoenix, seeks to rise triumphant out of the ashes of defeat? From the fringe of the fringe. The following fanatics and their ideologies come from groups or individuals that could easily be written off as just weird or insane. As a result, they can be seen as of no real importance due to their position on the extreme fringe of the fringe. However, it is still worth learning what thematic pieces of the puzzle they have to offer to the converging apostasy. As you will see, despite the far-flung nature of their beliefs and practices and the location which they occupy on the periphery of society, they have much in common with those who represent the norms of doctrines that are found in the teachings of their more civilized siblings in the converging apostasy. In his acclaimed book, Black Sun, Aryan Cults, Esoteric Nazism, and the Politics of Identity, 2002, Nicholas Goodrick Clark comes to a completely valid conclusion, which further illustrates this point. For example, he states that the thematically related beliefs of international sectarian groups could, under the proper conditions, gain political power and attempt to realize their dangerous millenarian fantasies. This point was forcefully brought to the attention of the American people on the first month of the year, on the 6th day in 2021, with the armed assault on the building in Washington, D.C. by the letter after P adherents, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and other patriots who felt the misguided desire to stop the steal. Among the groups and individuals that could potentially put their urge for sacred purge into action, Goodrick Clark lists: Number 1, those espousing the esoteric themes of Aryan origins. Number 2, those influenced by the writings of Julius Evola and Savitri Devi. 3, those who espouse UFO ideologies. Number 4, the Christian identity teaching of those like Wesley A. Swift. 5, the neo-fascist ideology of those like Richard Spencer and Alexander Dugin. Number 6, Hitler hate cults. Number 7, Nazi Satanists. And 8, Nordic racial paganism. What he was unaware of in 2002 was the increased number, radicalization, and normalization of those in the current day converging apostasy from both Christian and esoteric backgrounds who are already on the path toward enacting a sacred purge.
Run.
There's just one name that can keep you out of hell, and it's the name of Jesus. The name of Jesus. The name of Jesus.